JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. So PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, is it going to be tax-free? So let me first tell you, this video is specifically for one of my subscribers, Boomer Fitness. So thank you so much. I didn't even realize, but we had the super chat and the super stickers options turned on and we didn't even know. But John Hamilton, thank you. Boomer Fitness, thank you so much for being the first to buy those options, so to speak, which is pretty cool. So the question that specifically Boomer Fitness had is, do you think they're going to make PPP tax-free? And yes, I've done some videos talking about the taxation of this in terms of, well, what year do you want it to fall in, 2020 or 2021? I'll put a link to that video in the body of this. I did, how does the taxable situation work if you're a Schedule C? How does it work if you're a Schedule C with employees? And how does it work if you're an employer in terms of the tax adjustments? So watch those videos. I'm going to put a link to those videos in the body of this to how does the tax hit work? But the question that Boomer Fitness asked is, do you think they're going to make PPP tax-free? So just in case you're like, what? This has a taxable effect. Here's the deal. Whatever you spend of PPP funds that is then ultimately forgiven, that amount reduces down your expenses. So the CARES Act indicates that it's not income, so it's not a top line item, but when you reduce down your expenses, well, it kind of gets treated as though it's income in a backdoor way. So watch the other videos for details on that. You are going to hear some chainsaw activity going on. We're coming out of an ice storm and we've got power back on with all the trees that are down, and in my yard, totally one obliterated. Anyways, you're hearing the chainsaw out front, and I apologize. Been waiting, but they're still going. Boomer Fitness, I do feel like they're going to make PPP tax-free. It's one of the reasons that I'm wanting to wait to give my clients every option on knowing what we're doing before we apply for forgiveness. I want to give my clients less variables when we make a final determination of what we're doing in terms of applying for forgiveness. So I have another video I'll put a link to in the body of this, which is just talking about, when you should file and what I'm telling clients. But the reason, Boomer Fitness, that I feel like PPP will ultimately be tax-free, which means that it will not reduce down your expenses, is twofold. One, the CARES Act indicated for you to get PPP, you're required to use it as prescribed. And we know that it needed to be used on payroll, rent, utilities, and interest that's in the business name. Payroll costs, including health insurance and state unemployment tax. So I've got I got 3 different playlists to talk about the forgiveness. So if you have questions, go to those playlists. But given that the CARES Act required you to spend it and spend it all, there's no provision in there that indicated, spend 70% of it and hold money back for taxes. So the fact that it required you to spend all the money on the covered expenses with then no opportunity for there to be an allowance, if you will, to cover the taxes, that's where I think there'll be enough of a rub when we hit tax season, meaning January, February, or March, that Congress will hear an outcry, probably starting with me, of the fact that this is detrimental to many, many small business owners. Now, I'll give you a little sidebar line item here to let you know that if you're a self-employed individual, you don't have employees, check out the video that talks about the tax effect for the self-employed, because you have a unique set of circumstances that's pretty cool. and it won't have a tax hickey to you, but you're needing to watch that video on that. So of course, I should qualify this by saying this would be for those that are employers. If you have employees and you're paying W-2 wages, and you're an employee as well, if you have W-2 wages. And the fact of the matter is that those individuals were keeping other people afloat. The PPP was given to the businesses with a requirement that they pay their employees, with a requirement they pay rent, utilities, and interest. And if you remember when it first came out, like if you didn't do that, you potentially were going to be in trouble. So with the mindset that you had to use it as directed and nothing being in reserve to cover the taxes, that's where I feel like first will be the biggest reason that ultimately Congress will adjust, overturn the IRS's interpretation that this is going to have a tax effect because it will reduce down the covered expenses if you get the forgiveness. So the second reason, though, that I think that it'll ultimately be tax-free is what I was hinting at there in the first reason, which is the small business owner, instead of putting their employees on unemployment. So the small business owner could have said, absent PPP, listen, you're going to have to go and collect unemployment. So the whole purpose of the Paycheck Protection Program, and if you remember when it first came out, the requirement was you had to spend at least 75% on payroll. They later changed that in June with the PPP Flexibility Act that you only had to spend 60% on payroll. They gave you a longer period of time, 24 weeks, to be able to spend the money from PPP to better increase the odds that small business owners, and I guess, the people that got PPP, to increase their chances of full forgiveness. But, when I was talking about PPP in the early part of the pandemic, one of the things that I indicated was that in some ways, the small business owner that has employees is in a set of circumstances where they're just a conduit, meaning they're receiving the money to then just pay it to the employees. And by the way, the payroll cost that it covers does not include the employer portion of the payroll tax. It covers the gross pay to the employee. So small business owners, quite frankly, that took the PPP were doing it to the tune of 75%, later at least 60%, to just simply keep money going to their employees, even to the tune that the employer was still going to pick up another 7.65% in Social Security and Medicare taxes that have to be matched. Now, as a side note, yes, health insurance paid by the employer is included in the payroll cost, and any employer paid into the retirement is part of the payroll cost. But what's not part of the payroll cost is the fact that the employer still had to pick up 7.65%, didn't get any kind of reimbursement. Hindsight being 2020, if you have people that are in a jam now, people as in the self-employed, scratch that, the small business employer, okay? Because the self-employed is not having any tax effect on here. So hindsight 2020, if somebody were to say, you know what, I'm just going to send my employees on unemployment. I'm not going to have to pick up any employer payroll taxes, and they can go get their $600 a week back when that was an option and a benefit for those that were on unemployment through July 31st. But the small business owners that said, you know what, I am going to get that money and I am going to continue to pay my employees. I'm going to allow them to not have the mental detriment of I just lost my job, or the mental anguish of well, am I going to get my job back? Meaning if they went to unemployment. So the small business owner, well, I mean, PPP was up to 10 million. So the ones I'm dealing with, the ones that are on my channel, small business owners, we championed PPP. We took on the intent of PPP, which was to keep our employees employed, even if the business was closed. The requirement was you pay your employees. It didn't matter if you were open or not. You were supposed to pay your employees. So the fact of the matter is, when you got PPP, you were required to use it only on these covered expenses. That's great. But you were required to spend it all. That, in essence, has this backdoor tax hickey. The other part is that the employer is now, in essence, in my mind, being penalized for keeping their employees employed, as in taking the dollars, taking that risk, everything that goes along with PPP to pay the employees as a conduit. So now to have a set of circumstances where the employer, in essence, is going to have to pay tax on that, I think is minorly punitive. Now, at the end of the day, you could think of it this way, though, if you're really kind of running the numbers, and I'll close with this. So you have a business and it brings in 100,000 gross, and it has 100,000 in expenses, right? So payroll, rent, utilities, office supply, all the things. I'm not just talking about covered expenses, just all the expenses to run that business. It was $100,000. Well, without PPP, the net income would be a big fat goose egg, right? It'd be zero. But if they got PPP that covered 50,000 of payroll, meaning of the $100,000 of expenses, 50,000 of it went to payroll, and they got PPP, and they got full forgiveness. And let's just, for this example, just go with payroll for a minute. Well, they're going to have a net income of $50,000 that they're then going to pay tax on. But when you then turn the corner and you look at this and you go, well, if the employer had said, you know what, you all go on unemployment, and didn't have the 50,000 in payroll costs. Now, you got to remember, I'm trying to put an example into a vacuum here. I understand that there's a full year we're talking about, but just follow me with the example. But let's say that they brought in 100, they had 100,000 of expenses, 50,000 of it being payroll. But if they had sent their employees onto unemployment, they wouldn't have had the 50,000 in payroll, and they would have netted 50,000, right? Might be a head scratcher. You bring in $100,000, that didn't change in this example. A business brought in $100,000, and the 50,000 is all the other business expenses that wouldn't be covered by PPP. So they had 50,000 of these other expenses, dues, you name it. In a set of circumstances where they go, well, you know what? I'm not going to pay any of these other things because I'm sending that employee onto unemployment, they would net 50,000. So from that angle, it'd be like, well, the IRS is indicating specifically in their revenue procedure that this would end up being a double benefit to the employer, meaning they got money, they spent it, and they get to deduct it, would result in a double benefit. So again, check out the other videos talking about the tax effect, but the IRS is following the precedent of how they've handled anything related to a federal grant where the money is used for business purposes and then not having to be paid back. They've never been able to deduct those expenses. So the IRS is just ruling consistent. The IRS indicated that the only way they'll be able to change that interpretation is by an act of Congress. But let me bring you back to the first thing that I said. There's going to be a massive uproar. There's going to be a massive gasp come April 15th, if you will, when small business owners who probably don't know this right now, especially if you're not paying attention to my channel, if they don't know that they, in essence, have to add back PPP forgiveness or reduce down expenses, same thing. Which, if you're reducing down expenses, right, the net income goes up and you're going to have to pay tax on that net income. But there's no money, right? So again, on that first rub, it's like, but there's no money. I had to spend it all. I didn't have a choice. So with that rub, with that gasp, with that sense of unfairness, coupled with the second thing I had indicated to you, is that the small business owner took the PPP, paid their employees. So in some ways, it was a break even. It was a break even for the small business owner because they could have just sent their employees onto unemployment. Yes, it is a benefit to get PPP. No, you shouldn't have passed up PPP. That's not at all what I'm getting at. But do I feel that ultimately PPP will not have a tax effect? In essence, won't be taxable? I think yes, but that's pure opinion. Today is October 30th. Pure opinion. Pure opinion. But after 28 years, almost 28 years of practicing, being in the CPA industry, taking everything into account, taking all of this into account, and the history that we've seen with PPP, I think that'll be our full final result. Boomer Fitness, thank you. Thank you for buying the super sticker, super chat. And hopefully it's answered your question. All right, hey, should have asked at the beginning for all those here that were listening to the video that I specifically put together for Boomer Fitness. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love it if you would. I'd appreciate it. I don't get paid based on subscribers, but it helps with the algorithm. And I'm a CPA. I like to see numbers, and when numbers go up, it makes me feel good. So it's just an intangible. Just a side note, I am now putting things up on my community page, which is on YouTube, which is basically just a post with information and or a picture or both. And then check out my stories. I'm going to be putting little tidbits of information or fun on my stories. Basically, when you go to my page and you see the little circle that is the JJ the CPA, and in yellow it says JJ the CPA, and I'm looking real serious. If you click on that, you can see my story. Those things I put out, I don't get paid for any of that stuff. But what I'm doing is, if there's not really any information that's worthy of a full video, because I am really getting even more cutthroat in, I'm not going to put together a video just to put together a video on some update, because I like to keep you guys updated. But if it's like, I don't know, this is really worthy of a full video, then I might put it on my story like I did this week, 15 seconds to tell you that stimulus is going to be after the election. And then I did 2 posts related to stimulus negotiation update. So check that out as well. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. Have a great day. And thanks again, Boomer Fitness, for being the first as it relates to this one. And John Hamilton, appreciate you. Thank you as well.